Hello everyone and welcome back to my Christmas 2018 card series. I am going to be doing some work with stencils over the next few cards, and so I was going through my stencil book. This is how I store my stencils, just in a binder with sheet protectors and a piece of copy paper in between, and I pulled out all my Christmas stencils. And so I'm going to be doing a variety of things with stencils. The first ones in this video, I'm actually going to use stencil on one and then just stamping on another. But I will be using, the next video will be using some paste and stencils together. Okay, so this first one is going to be some ink smushing. And I'm using in Distress Oxide, Evergreen Bough, Ice Spruce, and Peeled Paint. And I'm doing this on Neenah Desert Storm. Both cards in this video are going to be on Neenah Desert Storm. I really like the craft look for Christmas. It gives it a more, I think, homey vintage kind of feel. Although I do a lot on white and other colors as well. But I really love the way the craft looks on a Christmas card. And I was a little more zoomed in than I thought I was on this. So anyway, ink smushing, I did my first layer and I'm drying it in between just with my little heat tool. It doesn't put out a lot of heat, but it does dry it with minimal warping. And you can get right up on it and not have any scorching or anything. So definitely dry between each layers, or else your layers are just going to smush together, and you won't get that layering effect that you really want when you're playing with your Distress Oxide inks. Okay, there we go. Zoomed out just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to take some Distress spray in tarnished bronze, and I gave it a couple of spritz, but I really wanted some more just dots, so I just took the nozzle off and just dotted it around. And quick and easy cleanup with a baby wipe. Okay, so now I'm going to take the Distress crayon in the same color, tarnished bronze, and I'm just going to go around the edge. So I'll just color on a little bit and then I'll just rub it in with my finger, and it just makes a really nice edging to your paper. I think it looks really good. It doesn't overpower, it's not a lot, but it just gives that little subtle hint of the gold around the edge, and so I think that turned out really pretty. Okay, now for the focal image on this card, I'm bringing in a Tim Holtz tag that came in a recent Simon Says stamp card kit, and I'm just going to ink it up with some Distress Oxide. And the surface on these tags is very slick, so the ink blending on it is super easy, especially with the oxides, because they just glide on so easy. But they really do just smooth out and everything. Just do a quick cleanup in between just to not contaminate my colors. Okay, now I'm bringing in my second color to go around the edge, and it wasn't layering really good, so I think it was still a little wet, and so I decided to bring out my heat tool again and dry in between the layers, because I really wanted it to not blend so much as I really wanted this next color just to stand out on top. So I'm just going around the edge. This is Ice Spruce. I think I started with Evergreen Bough, and now this is Ice Spruce. And it wasn't quite giving enough color around the edge, so I started just kind of dabbing it. And I found that dabbing it really worked well to get the kind of color around the edge that I needed. So if you got a slick surface and you're not getting the layering that you want, do try to dry in between the layers, and a little bit of a dabbing I think worked really well rather than trying to rub it on. So okay, now I've got my stencil. This is where I'm bringing in my stencil for this card. And it's this cute little holly stencil. I'm going to link down below to just the Christmas stencil pages to like Simon and Blitzy and scrapbook.com. They all have great stencils at really affordable, great prices. Stencils are really one of your cheaper tools in your craft arsenal. So I brought out the peel paint again, and I thought that stood out really well on top of these other colors and was a really good holly kind of color. So again, I'm drying in between and just hitting a little bit on the back. Okay, so now I did a little bit of embellishing to this, and I did not get that on film for whatever reason. But I just took some Nuvo drops in Autumn Red and went over the berries, and then with a, what do they call this, Secure Jelly Roll Stardust, that line, and with a green, and went over the vine in the middle. So now I'm taking my gold Inkastella, and I had this kind of rustic green twine in my stash. Not even really sure where this came from, but it just didn't have any gold or sparkle to it. So I went over it with the Inkastella, and it really kind of brought it to life and made it really pretty. So here's a final look at this card. I also stamped on the tag the Merry Christmas from the Hero Arts Color Layering Poinsettia stamp set, which I'm going to be using in this next video. And I stamped that with Deluxe Gold ink. Okay, so on the back there, it shows you, how to layer these up and everything. And so again, I'm using my Neenah Desert Storm to make this more vintage feeling kind of Christmas card. And poinsettias come in a lot of different colors. They come in the deep dark reds and the lighter reds and the pinks and whites and stuff. So I decided to do a deep dark one and a little bit lighter of one. And these are new stamps, so obviously I'm having to stamp it a couple times, but it will, as Simon says, stamp ink, as it dries, it does smooth out really nicely and everything. And also, don't worry if you're a little blotchy, because you're layering these, so you won't really see, and I think maybe some variation in color would probably look really pretty. So I'm using Watermelon, Merlot, and Schoolhouse Red by Simon Says Stamp. And so Merlot is my darkest color, so I'm using Schoolhouse Red as a base color, and I'm using Watermelon as a base color. So my layering on the Watermelon will be Schoolhouse Red, and my layering on the Schoolhouse Red will be the Merlot. And then for the final layer on top, because there's 3 layers to it, which is basically the veins of the poinsettia, I'm going to gold heat emboss those. So it does take a little bit to do this layering, but I think it's worth it. Although it's way faster than like coloring or something like that, but it does take a bit to line up all these stamps. And yes, red does stain your stamps, but it doesn't hurt them in any way. Red just always seems to stain everything. Anyway, I do give it a good wipe off in between, because you don't want to transfer ink to your paper when you're trying to position everything. Okay, so here we go with the second layer, and I'm just going to line up the first one and stamp it down. And like I said, between each stamping, you want to wipe off your stamp. Okay, so I'm just going to speed you through this stamping of the second layer. And I do kind of wish I had a little bit more of a color variation between the Schoolhouse Red and the Merlot, because it's a little bit harder to see the detail. The detail really shows up with the Watermelon and the Schoolhouse Red, and it looks really good. But when I add the third layer of the gold, it'll all turn out look really good. So I decided I wanted some white splatter on there, so I took my Copic Opaque White and just put a little bit on a block with, and then squeezed out some water from my Arteza water brush. I really like these Arteza water brushes. They hold a lot of water, and the pack comes in a variety pack, a bunch of different sizes, so really great. I did decide I wanted a few more little strategically placed white dots, so I took my Uniball Signo Broad white gel pen and just placed those around, and using my little heat tool to just dry everything so I can move on with the next part of this card. I learned a long time ago to, if I'm not going to just set it aside to let it dry, if I want to keep going, to break out the heat tool and to dry it, because else you're just going to make a mess of your card. Yes, ask me how I know that. Made a mess of quite a few of them. So now because I'm heat embossing, and so I definitely wanted to dry everything, or else you'll have embossing powder everywhere, and that's not going to be a very pretty look. So dry everything really well and then go over it really good with your anti-static powder. Okay, so I'm using Simon Says Clear Embossing Ink, and I'm really liking this. It's, you know, just as good as the Versamark. I really don't see a difference between the two. The pad's really nice and everything, so I really like it a lot. You know, so I think it's very interchangeable with the Versamark. So you let your heat tool heat up, and this will minimize your warping. And as you can see, that gold just makes those veins just really pop out. So did that for all of them. And I took out a piece of vellum and 2 of the sentiments from this stamp set, and which are We Wish You a, and then I put Merry Christmas, and I'm going to gold heat emboss on the vellum as well. And here again, you want to have your heat tool, you know, heated up so it can start melting instantly, or else you really warp your vellum. So I'm using Ranger's Princess Gold embossing powder, and as said, you want to, and vellum is really hard to hold and heat emboss, but be careful not to burn yourself on that. And I always funnel my stuff right back in because it's so easy to knock those little jars over. And then you can just wipe off the excess powder, and I'm just going to use a little bit of tape runner on the back just to hold this down. So I'm using on my glass mat, I'm using the grid lines to line this up and really get it straight. And then I'll do one side, and then I'll double check for straightness, and then I'll fold over and do the other side. So the only other thing left to do is the center dots in the poinsettia. So I'm using a little bit of Nuvo drops. I'm doing gold, and I'm also doing the glitter gold. I'm not going to show you this because you'd want to do the gold. When you're doing dots really close together, you want to do your furthest away dots, let them dry, and then do your other dots, or else you'll just have a blob. So here's a final look at this card. I really hope you enjoyed these backgrounds, and I will see you real soon in another video. Thanks for watching.